This evening, House Speaker John Boehner spoke at the Economic Club of New York to an audience of Wall Street executives, normally a warmly receptive audience for a Republican Speaker of the House. But these same Wall Street executives have been terrified by the juvenile talk coming from House Republicans about refusing to raise the debt ceiling. Speaker Boehner told them that the House of Representatives will pass legislation raising the debt ceiling before the August 2nd deadline if and only if that legislation includes certain conditions.
Without significant spending cuts and changes in the way we spend the American people's money, there will be no increase in the debt limit. And the cuts should be greater than the accompanying increase in the debt limit that the president has given. We're not talking about billions here. We should be talking about cuts in trillions if we're serious about addressing America's fiscal problems. And these should be actual cuts, real reforms to these programs, not broad deficit or deficit targets that punt the questions to the future. And with the exception of tax hikes, which in my opinion will destroy American jobs, everything is on the table, and I mean everything. That includes honest conversations about how to best preserve Medicare, because without changing Medicare, with millions of baby boomers about to retire, the status quo is unsustainable.
Those conditions will not be enough to satisfy Tea Party voters, according to the chair of the Tea Party Founding Fathers, who spoke at the National Press Club in Washington earlier today.
The Tea Party plans to score just one vote in the U.S. House for purposes of candidate ratings this year. If you vote to raise the debt ceiling, you get a 0 for the year from the Tea Party. If you don't vote to raise the debt ceiling, you score 100 and you're a hero. I wish our tearful House Speaker would just show some compassion for American taxpayers and our children, but he and Mr. Ryan have already surrendered to President Obama. It's a cowardly act of treason against coming generations, and we may be able to give Boehner something really to cry about in 2012.
Joining me now, Labor Secretary during the Clinton administration and Professor of Public Policy at the University of California, Berkeley, Robert Reich. Thank you very much for joining me tonight, Bob.
Good evening, Lawrence.
I don't know if you had a monitor there you could see who actually appeared at the National Press Club today in Washington, but it is a new low. He appeared in costume as a pretend founding father, outraged at the notion of raising the debt ceiling, which, of course, the founding fathers would have understood would be imperative to maintain the credit rating of the United States of America. Is John Boehner actually going to end up stuck towing the Tea Party line here, or the line that Wall Street wanted to hear tonight, which is that he is going to raise the debt ceiling with or without conditions when the moment comes, no matter what?
Well, John Boehner was threading a very, very tiny needle today, because on the one hand, you've got the Wall Street big business wing of the Republican Party. They want the debt ceiling raised. They are worried, I think with good reason, that if the debt ceiling is not raised, or if there's a lot of talk about not raising the debt ceiling, that could spook world credit markets, that could lead to a huge spike in interest rates. The dollar could plummet. We could have we could put the full faith and credit of the United States in jeopardy. But on the other hand, you've got the Tea Party wing, and exemplified by the fellow you just talked about and showed on this program, and they don't want the debt ceiling raised. They also don't want to raise any taxes, even on the rich. And those two sides of the party, they can't be reconciled. John Boehner tried to reconcile them. I think he actually said much more that the Tea Party would agree with than Wall Street would agree with, because John Boehner knows that Wall Street and big business are basically going to be funding the Republican Party in any event, but they need the Tea Partiers in 2012 to be the ground troops to get out the vote. And that's what they're most interested and most concerned about.
The chief economist for Moody's Analytics told Bloomberg News today, speaking for Wall Street, what Wall Street wants to hear is that they are going to raise the debt ceiling in a timely way. When it comes down to brass tacks, they are going to raise that debt ceiling. That is not what John Boehner told them tonight. That is not what they heard. He gave them one of those, he said there will be no debt limit increase unless Republicans get their way on everything. This had to leave those Wall Street operatives really worried when they left the Boehner speech tonight.
Well, I would think so. In a way, Lawrence, he thumbed his nose at Wall Street. He also, though, if you read between the lines, and as an old Washington hand, you read between the lines, and I do too as well, he also said everything's on the table except tax increases. Now, that's a problem because nobody in America is going to really be in favor of the kind of cuts that John Boehner and Paul Ryan want, and certainly even 64% of Republicans in the latest Washington Post ABC poll said they wanted taxes to be raised on the rich. 64% of Republicans said that. So John Boehner is really in trouble with a lot of the rank and file if he pursues the direction he's going in. But he also said that he would reconsider Medicare. It looks as though that a lot of Republicans who went home for the holidays, they got an earful from their constituents about the Paul Ryan plan to get rid of Medicare, essentially turn it into a voucher program. They don't like that. Nobody likes it. And I think that Boehner is backing away from that.
Big surprise, Medicare is popular. I don't know why their polls didn't tell them that already.
The odd thing, Lawrence, the really odd thing is that 1 year ago, Republicans, remember, they were claiming that the Democrats' health care bill was going to wreck Medicare and destroy Medicare. They were using Medicare to clobber the Democrats. And to think that the Americans have such a short attention span. I mean, how can they possibly believe that the attention span is that short?
Yeah, they very specifically rose as the defenders of Medicare, posed as the defenders of Medicare in the healthcare reform debate, saying you can't touch it in any way. And here they are. Robert Reich, former Labor Secretary, thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Thanks, Lawrence.